Salve everyone, welcome once again to these our weekly podcasts that we do together with all of you. And in these podcasts we talk about a variety of subjects, theological subjects, things for helping the families. And today we would like to a different topic that we don't think we've ever really spoken about in our podcasts, which I would like to say what's the true physiognomy of a saint? Because let me ask you a question. When you think of any saint, what comes to your mind? Is it that he had an easy life? He had no obstacles for him to go ahead with his vocation? Is that a rosy cheek, sitting on a cloud, everything easy, peaceful? Do you really think the life of the saint was like that? So today, in this podcast, we're going to be talking about a saint that's known and loved by everyone. And ask you another question. Is everything that we hear about the saints, is that truly historical? So, who is the saint that we're talking about? We're going to be talking about none other than the great Saint Francis of Assisi. But before we get into this podcast, I want to remind you about the consecration course that we, the Heralds, offer to everyone. Each of us, when we make this consecration, we give ourselves as slaves of love in the hands of our Blessed Mother. And to talk about St. Francis, we all know St. Francis had a huge devotion to our Blessed Mother. So for that, I'm going to ask the ones behind the scenes there to place a link in the description for you to find out more about this consecration if you don't know about it yet. If you do, you can pass it on to others. But don't click on it yet. Wait to the end of the podcast. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce someone that you all know, been on our podcast many, many times, is Reverend Father David Ritchie.
Thank you very much, Brother Vincent. It's good to be here.
It's a pleasure to always have you here with us,
especially
Father.
Talking about the great seraphic Francis of Assisi.
And we also have with us once again Brother Plino.
Thank you very much, Brother Vince, for inviting me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
It's good to be
Especially
here.
With Father David.
It's good to be here with all of you again. And I hope we can meet in the future to discuss, maybe to celebrate a Mass for everyone. We have a plan to do some podcasts, daring podcasts. I'm going to take you on 2 trips with me in these next podcasts that we're going to do.
Oh, wow.
It's a daring innovation. Okay.
Everybody's invited to get on the plane and come with Father David. Live podcast.
But I'm not going to tell you the topics, but we're going to travel. Not to Assisi. But today we're going to travel to Assisi. Have you ever been to Assisi, Brother Vincent?
No, I've never had the grace of being
No,
there.
unfortunately not.
And that you must ask your guardian angel to take you to Assisi because it's one of, amongst all of the places that you can go to. First of all, it's a total medieval town. It hasn't changed
since
800 years at least.
Oh my goodness.
Of course, there are some changes. And it's the best pizza attaglio that I've ever had in my life. Pizza attaglio. There's the in Italy they make those pizzas. The thin round ones that they goes over the plate. It's a
whole pizza per person.
Pizza per person. But they have a pizza attaglio by pieces, and that you can where we get to pick up a hamburger or something like that. They have they give you pieces for a snack for a quick lunch.
Yeah.
They have these huge pieces and they cut it and they sell it by pizza. And then that's the little bit thicker type, but it's magnificent because their dough is perfect. But I don't know if St. Francis was able to eat pizza at that time.
Well, I'm sure it's a blessing that the city has because of St. Francis.
Definitely. St. Francis and other saints is like St. Clare. But Brother Vincent, we're talking about one of the saints that marked history. And that there are so many, let's say, unprecisions, details that are
not precise.
Unprecise, yes, about Saint Francis. And his name was not Francesco. His name was actually Giovanni. Giovanni and
John.
yes, John. His name was John because his mother, he was born in 1181. So we're talking about high Middle Ages, and uh, he was actually his father, who was Peter Bernardone, was traveling. His father was a silk merchant, a cloth merchant, and was in France on business when John Bernardone was born, Giovanni. And then when his father, the story, some sources tell us, because today we're going to try to follow those true historical sources. And of course, just like as Catholic doctrine, where do we have the sources? We have it in the Bible, of course, in the books that are inspired, and we have things that are part of tradition, pious tradition that follows. But of course, sometimes people try to add to pious tradition or to legend, which is some things that are not very precise. And I think it's good that we enchant ourselves with, because everyone, when you hear Saint Francis, it's like you have an attraction. You don't even know why.
Yep.
Yes.
Saint Francis. Well, I feel like I know Saint Francis. He was the the man. He was the saint who was mystical. He was married to Lady Poverty, as we say, and we don't even know why. Why was he married, mystically espoused to Lady Poverty? But that's something we'll talk about in a little while. So, and he was born in Assisi, in Italy. And when his father got back, his father was so anxious to get out of France, to come back from the
to see his child.
and Francesco is France in Italian, and so gave him that name.
Oh, that's how he got the.
That's how he got the name Francesco. Francis came from
named him after his journey that he was doing when he was
the journey to France. And of course, he was a very joyful boy, youth, very joyful. That was one of his characteristics, and very expansive. He liked to sing, but he was already from youth. He was very kind and very, very sensitive to the necessity of others, and that was the soil which God would plant
the seed of his vocation.
the seed, exactly. So we're gonna use, of course, we have some biographies. We besides the encyclopedias, we have biographies. A good biography is Friar Augustine Thompson. He's an American, I believe he's an American. He published a new biography. It's called Saint Francis, a new biography in 2012. And he studied about the life of Saint Francis, and pretty much so he clarifies a lot of the historical doubts about Saint Francis. Of course, we have other biographies, but you know something. One of the things, when you spoke about the true physiognomy of the saints, one of the portraits, one of the presentations that people give of Saint Francis nowadays is that he was a medieval hippie.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
He was a medieval hippie that was against his time.
Yeah.
And that is true, that he was against his time. Therefore, he fought against tendencies that existed at the time. And we're talking about
the bad tendencies of the time.
Bad tendencies of the time. Brother Vincent, we're talking about the 13th century. What was happening in the 13th century? We have Pope Innocent the third, Pope Innocent the third, and it was a time when people were trying to break away not only from the emperor, the peoples, the nations were breaking away from the emperor. They were breaking away from the authority of the Pope. So Saint Francis, we have at the same time Saint Dominic, And we have also, that comes into history, Simon de Montfort, who was the French knight, which was
nobleman.
leader, who, of course, is very much taken out of context in many circumstances. He was the brutal, and he was the one who led the Albigensian Crusade. Well, we know that, of course, that Simon de Montfort was a very good friend of Saint Dominic,
Yeah.
right?
True.
And so we're
And the Albigensian Crusade started when the Albigensians killed
right.
the preachers that went to them.
papal legate.
Yeah.
The papal
Yeah.
legate went to them,
Yes.
and they murdered him.
They murdered.
That's when the Crusade started.
The Cathars, and so we were in a part of history. Even if you take a look in history, what some of the things we have, Francis attends parish school in San Giorgio. That's in 1190. So he's a boy, and then we have a very important date, which is Chiara di Favarone, Saint Clare, when he's born in 1193. So all of these vocations, okay,
Or intersecting.
Pope Innocent the Third. We have Saint Francis. We have Saint Dominic. We have Simon de Montfort, we have Saint Clare, and then the other followers who are going to join. So Innocent the Third was born in 1160. He died in 1216, just 1 year after Saint Francis goes to Rome with his 11 disciples, because he considered him.
It was just after that he.
Right.
Pope, I didn't realize.
Exactly. He died shortly after approving the rule of Saint Francis. So and that's one of the beautiful things, I think we can delve into this story. When Saint Francis, he was denied by Innocent the Third. He was denied the approval of his rule.
Oh, really?
Yes, exactly because of the danger of the Albigensians, the Cathars, or Valdavians, or whatever you call them. So, but what was this heresy that was entering into Europe and spreading? And it wasn't only a heresy in thought. They were very aggressive, like you mentioned, that they murdered the papal legate. But what was the heresy that was entering? What was the Albigensian heresy? It was a heresy of dualism. Okay. And so what is dualism? There are two gods. There's a good God.
Good God and a bad God.
And a bad God. Right? And so the bad God, in their conception, the bad God created matter. And matter is always...
all matter is evil.
All matter is evil.
So natural things are evil.
Natural, exactly. That's it. Natural things are evil. So marriage is evil, because that's the union of man and woman. The fact, but worse than that, they denied that our Lord Jesus Christ was true God and true man. Therefore, the incarnation, because if God became man, he was becoming evil. He was becoming evil.
He was uniting the good God with the bad God.
Exactly. He was uniting the good God with the bad God. So they didn't accept the sacraments, especially marriage. And that's why all material things were evil. Trees.
Oh, that's why
Plants.
That's why then and people say that Saint Francis was ecological, because he defended nature against the
heresy.
Exactly. And that's even one of Father Augustine Thompson. He even clarifies that matter, that Saint Francis was not an ecological. He was not vegetarian. And he was not vegetarian, and he actually ate meat normally as the custom of the time. Of course, he fasted, and he did a lot of penance,
like most other saints as well.
Yes, well, the saints, that was part. But we were going into the story of when he went to meet with Innocent the Third. And of course, he was one of he didn't consider himself, I am like the represented, I am Jesus and I have
Mm-hmm.
12 apostles. No, he was one of the 12
Oh, that's why he went with
apostles.
That's why
what
there are
he-
11.
11
He was
total.
11 and 12. And so he arrived there and asked for the approval of his rule, which was quite strict because they was the Franciscans are a mendicant
Mhm.
order. That means, but that's another thing that is a lie. At least the Franciscans, the tradition from Saint Francis, they prefer what they receive as a heritage. And some Franciscan brother can correct me, but according to what I've been reading, that he preferred that they work in order to eat than to beg.
Okay. Interesting.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Because they didn't want to be a weight on society.
Kind of like St.
Of
Paul.
course.
Exactly.
St. Paul said he
Saint
would work
Paul.
so he wouldn't put a
Right. So you
strain on
shouldn't
them.
burden down others. So
Mhm.
the Franciscans they would work in order to obtain the means of
Mhm.
subsistence. They were
Okay.
always self-supported. If you go to the great Franciscan monasteries, many of them, they were like the pioneers in planting and being
Mhm.
self-sufficient, the
Sure.
monasteries. So that was part of
Mhm.
their rule.
But the poverty is something personal, right? Of course, they would work to sustain
In the order.
the order,
Hmm.
but they themselves, each one, how is the poverty of each member of this order?
Well, that's according into the rule what they should have and what they should not
Yes.
have. But of course, Saint Francis, and that's the great. What we look up to Saint Francis, it's unpretentiousness. I don't pretend to be. And once you
Mhm.
speak about poverty, if you look in Saint Francis's writings, the word poverty, almost never shows up.
Oh, really?
Even
Wow.
though he had a mystical marriage with poverty,
Mhm.
but he spoke more about the Eucharist than about poverty.
Oh, really?
Yes,
I never heard
he
about.
spoke more about the Eucharist than poverty, and that's one of the things. For instance, there's that peace song. What do you call it? Bring me your peace.
Make me a channel of your peace there.
Make me a channel of your peace.
Peace.
That's something
Prayer of Saint
that's
Francis.
one of the
Yeah.
exactly that they attribute that to Saint Francis. If you look historically, the first time that shows up
Mhm.
is in French, and it's in 1913,
Oh wow.
19,
Oh wow. So it was,
1912.
oh wow. So it was
1912.
it was in the 20th century.
700 years afterwards.
Oh my goodness.
700 years
Ah.
afterwards, that's not. And even the authors, the specialists in St. Francis say definitely that is not the author of that song, that hymn is not St. Francis, because it always says I, me,
Oh, and Saint Francis
I am an
never
instrument of your peace. Make
me.
me.
And-
And he said Saint Francis never used those pronouns like
Okay. He never put
Oh.
himself as in the first. It
Right.
was always.
And what
Put
about
himself
that?
as
They say that Saint Francis would always say, "May the Lord give you peace." Is that a
Yes.
term that he would use?
Yes, that was a term that
It's
he
the Lord,
used.
it's not him.
May the Lord give you peace. Exactly, because why? We'll speak about that in a little bit. I'll answer that question,
Alright.
which is very good. But you see, we're going through the plans of
Mhm.
God for him. When he arrived in Rome, the Pope Innocent said to him, "No, not going to approve." Exactly, because he thought that could his opening
Mhm.
to nature would be in the erroneous aspect
Maybe.
of giving of an exaggeration in some, and it was
Okay.
actually to counteract the Albigensians'
heresy.
heresies, their
Okay.
tendencies. So since they said that everything that was matter was evil, he would show how can that be evil,
Mhm.
right? The birds are so beautiful, the nature is so beautiful, and even he has the canticle of
Mhm.
creation, the song of
Yeah.
creation. We'll be able to see that in a few minutes, but what he called Lord,
Mhm.
brother, son. He
Yeah, I was
said-
going to ask you about that. Why did he use that term of brother, sun, and
What?
sister, moon?
But exactly that term, he would say, Lord, brother, son. So
Ah,
it was a canticle of admiration to the creation of God, which the Cathars were denying. So it was a crusade, and that's what we're going to go into. God was making plans in order to restore. It was a counter-revolutionary movement that came from two pillars of Christianity, which were Saint Francis and Saint Dominic. Of course, we have some historical. I don't know. I'll use the term historical legend, but our pious belief is that they went both at the same time in Rome. That's when they met to see Saint Angelo, who became a martyr, preach.
Okay. Oh, so that was why they. Because I was reading something there about saying how Saint Francis, he had like it was a dream, or if it was
He had a vision.
It was a vision right there of Our Lady trying to, because God was about to want to chastise mankind, and she was trying to
hold back
his the wrath of God, and she presented two men, and Saint Francis he recognized himself there.
He recognized himself.
But then he didn't know who the other one was.
Exactly.
And if I'm not mistaken, was the next day he was walking somewhere in Rome, and then
this is what St. John Lateran, the Basilica of St. John Lateran Church.
And then St. Dominic came up to him and embraced him, said, "You are my companion." And
right, exactly. That's when they met. We even have here a depiction. I don't know if you can see it, but it's when St. Francis meets St. Dominic, the two columns of the church. Professor Plinio Correa de Oliveira, he would say that they were two walls.
Oh, wow.
Not only columns, but they were two walls that stopped the advance of evil.
Oh,
that they were walls that stopped the advance of evil.
That's beautiful.
And let's say when you say that he was married to Lady Poverty, he was married to Our Lady, to the Lady Sublimity. Marvelous. Because he was so enchanted, which the reflection, that's why he said, Lord, brother, son, Lord, sister, moon. So it was respect for that which God created. And to see God in creatures. And that's why his great desire to save souls. And he would do everything to save souls. True. When he even exchanged his clothing with the leper. He had at one point, this was when in his conversion process, a little bit before, I believe even was a little bit before he put on the religious habit. He exchanged clothes, which his clothes were still civil clothes. He gave his better clothes,
the silks and everything there to the leper.
To the leper, exactly. And so he met with Saint Dominic, and he even suggested to Saint Dominic that they join into the same religious order, the same foundation.
Oh, wow. Oh, really?
Yes. And Saint Dominic said, no, we'll do it, we'll be complementary. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Complementary. Two saints that will work together. Saint Dominic preaching, because the Dominicans, order of preachers. Therefore, heralds of the gospel. Heralds of the preachers. And Saint Francis with his admiration for creation.
And his example for the...
And therefore, and why did he embrace poverty? Because at the time, there was a great desire to use creatures. And even, why did he have to oppose? Why did his father have opposition? Peter Bernardoni, had opposition to Francis's religious vocation, exactly because he wanted to use all matter, all material goods for to go up to God
Mhm.
for the salvation of souls. And that's what happened when
Well, you look at a lot of the Franciscan churches.
mhm,
Them, they're beautiful, beautiful churches.
absolutely beautiful.
Used with gold and things like that, because it was all being made to using those materials, the creation of God, to elevate the people,
Mhm.
So you could say we
not
had
for their
a-
own personal, not for your own personal gain.
Saint Francis, he wrote a letter to I even brought that letter here for you to look at if you want. It was a letter to the custodes. Custodes 1 is a letter, and he has some very beautiful words about that. I know we're going away from our topic right now, but he speaks to the whole friar minors, friars minor, therefore to his direct followers, those who were, let's say, the first order. And what does he say? He speaks about the Holy Eucharist, his holy body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ, and his holy names and written words which sanctify the body should be venerated above all things. Chalices, corporals, the ornaments of the altar, and all the things which pertain to sacrifice should be held precious. And if any place the most holy body of the Lord will have been very poorly placed, according to the mandate of the church, let him, Jesus, be put in a precious place by them, and let him be sealed up with great veneration, borne about with discretion, ministered unto others. So his great zeal, he even had at a certain moment, he proclaimed like a crusade for the Holy Eucharist, to bring the Holy Eucharist.
Mhm.
And that's why he wanted everything, all liturgical vessels,
Mhm.
like you said, the Franciscan churches
Mhm.
are the traditional Franciscan
Yeah,
churches, the
it's
older.
spectacular. I mean, in
Ex-
Brazil, they have these in one of these cities in
Mhm.
Brazil. They have these churches, the Franciscan churches. They're just,
Very
I
rich.
mean, extremely
all gold
all
plated.
gold, but it's
Because
spectacular. But it's everything.
and brother Vincent, brother Plinio, you must remember that the house of God, it's the palace of the poor,
Mhm.
Yes.
True.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The house
Very
of
true.
God is the palace of the poor, and that's where they can read in that veneration, that adoration to the
Mhm.
Blessed Sacrament. They can read where we place God in first place.
Yeah.
So, just going back to
Mhm.
that hymn that we were talking about, that
Oh.
they
Oh
consider,
yeah.
The
it
peace
doesn't
prayer.
mention God nor Jesus in.
Yeah. True.
Oh,
So that's why again
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mention peace. So that this letter that he wrote to his own disciples is very, very interesting. To go back. So, what happened in 1202? Following our chronology, Saint Francis is put into prison. Why? Because uh, Assisi was in. Besides the civil war, it
Mhm.
went into war
It's
with
another
Puglia, right?
neighboring town there.
With the neighboring town.
oh,
And the nobles, the higher inhabitants
Yeah, the richer
of us,
ones.
rich inhabitants of the city, fled to Puglia, and then there was a war, and he
Mhm.
was in prison because he was actually a knight,
Yeah.
and he was a soldier, therefore, and he was put into prison for 1 year.
Oh, it was 1 year.
Yes.
I didn't realize it was so. I remember. I
Mhm.
didn't realize it was so long.
And he actually was terrible for him. His father ransomed him
Mm-hmm.
and got him out of prison. But a little while longer, he was still near his 20s.
Mm-hmm.
A little while longer, he decided he was discerning his vocation. And one day, helping his father in the market,
Mm-hmm.
he took some very rich silks and
Expensive
clothing,
cloth.
expensive clothing, and sold them and gave the money to the poor.
Mm-hmm.
His father was very upset with that and took him to court.
Mm-hmm.
Took him to court, and he said, I'm not under civil law. You can take me if you want to the judgment
Mm-hmm.
of religious law,
Mm-hmm.
therefore the bishop,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm giving myself totally to God. And the bishop said, well, come to my palace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he went. And at that moment, he said to his father, he said, here is everything you gave me. All of his belongings,
Mm-hmm.
his money, he gave back to his father. And he even stripped his clothes. And
Mm-hmm.
he gave that to his father too.
And that's when the bishop took off
And the
his
bishop
cloak and
covered him, right? And that moment, some say that he said, now I can truly say, our Father who art in heaven, because my Father is the Lord who is
Mhm.
in heaven. And so his father
disowned him. Yeah.
owned him.
Mm-hmm. That's like what we were saying in the beginning in the introduction there. A lot of the times the saints, they didn't have, it wasn't easy for them to fulfill their vocation, to go ahead with their vocation. There was a lot of opposition
Mm-hmm.
too. And that one there, you see, St. Francis, his father was totally against that.
Right. And in the town of Assisi and Puglia and
Yeah.
those surroundings, what was the big problem? They wanted to separate from the emperor and from the influence of the Pope.
Mm-hmm.
And the great work of Innocent III was actually to be able to have control
Mm-hmm.
of the bishops and
Mhm.
to put the doctrine of the church into practice.
Yeah, because there was a time there was a lot of
Political rivalries.
And the church, or the members of the church would get involved with those political rivalries as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because I think Assisi was in the Papal States too, right? It was a
Mhm.
part of the Papal States. So it was.
So 1205, he's advancing, and we see that at a certain moment, Saint Francis, he decides totally that he's going to take on his religious vocation. Of course, his meeting with the Pope is later on,
Of course, yes.
and with Saint Dominic. But at a certain moment in the church of San Damiano, he has a vision,
Mhm.
of a mystical vision, and Jesus on the cross tells him to repair his church. He says, Francis, repair my church, rebuild my church. And there's even this is not from Giotto, this is more contemporary, but here it's Saint Francis holding up the church. There's another picture that we have, a painting of Giotto, which is in the Basilica of of Assisi,
Mhm.
right? In which he's like with one of his shoulders, he's holding up, sustaining the church, which is so beautiful.
It's very beautiful how God
But that
chooses anybody to sustain his church.
right. And what was that? That was a dream of the Pope, Innocent III.
Oh.
He saw Francis holding up the church, helping to rebuild the church, because there were so many situations which it seemed like Christianity was crumbling. And it was in the middle of the Crusades. And what happened? Innocent received him, recognized that he was the man, and gave him pontifical approval.
Oh, so when you said in the beginning, when the Pope didn't approve his rule in the first time, he hadn't seen St. Francis at
He
that
hadn't
time.
seen him yet.
Oh, okay. So it was after.
No, he didn't see him in a dream.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very beautiful because Giotto depicts the Pope lying in bed, even with the tiara and everything. And then he sees the scene of St. Francis holding
Mm.
one of the columns of the church up.
Mhm.
And then after, you see how God spoke
Mhm.
in dreams, like he spoke to Saint Joseph
True.
and was directing
Mhm.
his church, which in such a beautiful manner.
Oh, so the Pope actually met St. Francis before that dream.
Yes.
Okay, so then when he had that dream, he realized
He had
was-
exactly.
and then he called
He had a
St. Francis back
he-
and gave the
Mhm.
his approval.
Yes, because I don't know if he actually met him personally,
Mhm.
but he definitely had received the request
Oh, okay.
to approve
Hmm.
the Dominican
The
Dominican rule,
Franciscan, the
Franciscan-
Franciscan
rule.
rule. Exactly. Well, then we have many other situations, but I'm not going to
Mhm.
take up our time with that. But of course, he wants to be more and more perfect. He wants to be more and more perfect, and that's when he helps the lepers. At a certain moment, something which is totally beautiful. We already spoke about he's meeting Saint Dominic, but he even in 1211, he wants to go to convert the Muslim world.
Oh, that's why
Mhm.
I heard there's a movie that said something like that, The Sultan and the Saint. Is that because of that?
Yes, but before that, before he meets up with the Sultan Ali,
Oh, he actually meets the Sultan.
yes,
I didn't watch the movie, of course. I just heard that it exists.
he before he meets the Sultan, he actually wanted to go to Egypt and to go to the Muslim world,
No.
and he has a shipwreck.
Okay.
You know that
Those
Saint
things that happen in the life of the saints.
Yeah.
Not
mhm.
everything's
Not
easy.
everything's.
you know that Saint Francis was not a priest.
Yeah.
Saint Francis
He
would
never
only
became a
he
priest.
only became a deacon, and he had a best friend, like, or a best disciple, let's say, who was Friar Leo. And Friar Leo was a priest, yes, and was actually his confessor. And some of the things we know
Mm-hmm.
were actually from Friar Leo.
Oh.
One of the things, for instance, that Friar Leo was so he was totally
Enchanted?
dedicated, enchanted. He had a passion for Saint Francis, and one of the things that would happen, that he found out, that when Saint Francis would go into ecstasy, that the feet of the person who is in ecstasy, you can't feel your feet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where he would take advantage to kiss the feet
Oh.
of
Saint
Saint
Francis.
Francis. So he kissed Saint Francis's feet at those moments when he was
Was
going.
there because he wouldn't notice it.
He wouldn't notice it. He couldn't say no.
Mhm.
So
Interesting.
he would take care of those moments. That would be very interesting to see Saint
Yeah, that would have
Francis.
been.
It's a
Let
pity
me see.
that did Giotto paint that as well?
I don't remember.
That would
I
be a
don't remember
beautiful
seeing-
painting.
Yes, we'll have
One
to.
saint in ecstasy. the
We'll
other,
have to
I don't know if Leo was a saint as well, but the other saint. If he was
Friar
canonized. Was
Friar
he
Leo.
canonized?
I'm not sure if he became a canonized saint, but he's definitely Saint Francis found a way to take him to heaven too.
Not even went up holding on to his feet.
Mhm. So right after this, when he goes and he's, of course, he has heavy winds. He doesn't go to the Muslim territory. He wants to convert the Muslims. What does he do? He comes back, and that's when he meets Saint Clare.
Oh, okay. It was after
Chiara, right?
Hmm.
That was after his first attempt to convert
the
the Muslim world. And how did he meet Saint Clare? This is very interesting, because Saint Clare goes with her mother and goes to see Saint Francis preaching, and with a friend too, with a young lady.
Mm-hmm.
And when they see Saint Francis, she becomes absorbed by Saint Francis, and a little while afterwards presents herself and says, "Listen, I want to follow you. I want to do." Of course, some historians say she's at the first flower of poverty, and she is, because what is poverty? It's total submission, total abandoning to that saint, someone who we admire, and someone in who we see Christ.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she saw. She saw
Christ.
Jesus Christ in Saint Francis, and she became a slave. Even something very, very beautiful. One night in the Portiuncula, the Portiuncula was that first
First,
little chapel,
mhm.
which was dedicated to Our Lady of the Angels. I was actually asking Brother Vincent, what was the invocation of the Blessed Virgin Mary that Saint Francis most had devotion to?
Oh, you
Our
meant
Lady of the Angels.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
Our Lady of the Angels. So one night, you can imagine with torches
Mhm.
and
Because
candles.
she
I don't
kind
know
of
what
went
kind of light.
there
Yes, somewhat
secretly because her
secretly,
father didn't want her anything, didn't
right,
want to allow her.
didn't want to allow her to go. And she was 18 or 17, 18
Mhm.
years old. And so I guess she was already
Overage.
Yeah.
well, I don't know if legally now
Mhm.
21 or 18 or whatever, but but in any case, she was sensible,
Yeah.
and of course she was
Mhm.
following God's desires. She placed herself at the feet of and consecrating, and it was at that moment when she and some of her friends placed herself. Saint Francis actually accepted her as a vassal, as a spiritual vassal,
Mhm.
a spiritual servant, and that she would follow in everything his will and his rule. And this is her. That was on the occasion when Saint Francis himself, cut off her locks, her hair, and gave her a new vestment. You could see, now you understand a little bit what was happening. Imagine people who were wealthy, full of clothing that
Mhm.
was what was not directing themselves to God, wasn't useful to
Mhm.
getting to God. That's why at that moment he brought into this alliance with poverty, but an alliance of the poverty which was sublimity, with detachment from the world.
Mhm.
Isn't that so beautiful?
Yes.
And of course, there were a few friars who were already following at that time. They weren't the 12 yet, but they were a few who were with St. Francis and helped him in this ceremony to receive the first young ladies that would become the Poor Clares. Very beautiful story. And so, and after that, of course, St. Francis received as a present, this is in 1213, received as a present Laverna. Laverna was a mountain in Tuscany, which was a property where he would go to rest.
Oh,
And he
really?
would go
No.
to, like, that was
Interesting.
his Bethany, let's say,
Okay, like our Lord will go to
like
the house of
of Lazarus
Lazarus and
and
Martha.
Martha and Mary. And that was, he received that as a donation, a contribution, and he would go there for moments of retreat and solitude. And that's
Yes.
where he would receive the stigmata.
Oh, it was there that he received it.
Exactly.
I thought it was in that first little
The
chap.
Portiuncula. The
chapel.
Portiuncula actually means a portion,
Mhm.
a small
portion.
portion.
Oh, some
Mhm.
portion.
Uh-huh.
No, I thought it was there that he received it, not in the.
Mhm.
Interesting.
And see,
Yes,
even though he gave everything away, God still
right.
gave him new property.
Gave him a property, which would be afterwards very special to the foundation. So Saint Francis, of course, he would started. What was his great devotion was the Holy Eucharist and Jesus on the cross, and of course he started exhorting that the Catholics go to communion, receive the Holy Eucharist. And at that time, 2 years after he began this crusade for the Eucharist, of course, he received around 5,000 monks. 5,000
5,000. That was that time. Wow.
in 1217. Historically, he had volunteers who began, and that's why the first order were the friars, and then of course he had the sisters, which he co-founded with Saint Clare,
Yes.
and then a while later he started the tertiaries, which was the
third order.
third order,
Third order Franciscans.
and who are people in the world. Many of our brother Franciscans know that many who follow the evangelical teachings of Saint Francis but who are married people or non-married people, but who live in the world, in their jobs, in other things, which but in any case, you asked me about meeting the Sultan, Al Kamil, and of course you have that movie that came out in. It was I think there were some Franciscans that helped with the production of the movie, but it was something which was somewhat independent. And of course, the movie also gave an idea that that Saint Francis was like he sucked out the venom of the Crusades, right? And that he was against the Crusades, but that's not historical, because when he went to Egypt to meet with the Sultan, he actually preached to the Sultan and invited the Sultan to become Christian. But the Sultan actually was very honest in the sense that he admired, he saw the authenticity, was impressed by the character of Saint Francis.
Conviction that Saint Francis had.
And Saint Francis accompanied the Fifth Crusade, but I don't know if he went before that. I think he went to the Holy Lands maybe once before that, but he actually wanted to convert the Sultan so that he could, of course, find a way of liberating quicker, and then it didn't have to be through weapons, right? Because, of course,
if he was able to convert
military strength is the last resort. And so he wanted to find that fashion. So you had, but of course, a little bit after that, there was no solution, and
Sultan didn't convert. He was impressed, but he didn't convert.
Right, he was impressed, but he didn't convert. So
he was actually, if I'm not mistaken, he was kind of imprisoned. He kind of imprisoned Saint Francis when they first arrived there, of course. But then he got so impressed by his preaching and everything, then he released him unharmed.
He released him unharmed.
But if I'm not mistaken, Saint Francis was kind of, since when he became there, he wasn't like trying to, but he was kind of looking forward. Maybe he would become a martyr or something like that, this and that. But of course, God had other plans for him. So that.
And one of the things that was very hurt a lot Saint Francis is when I think there were seven of his friars were martyred in Morocco. This was in 1224, I believe, around that date. But he was also at the same time very happy that they were in heaven, and that their blood would be the seed of new Christians, and that would help to expand, because we're talking about a revolutionary process by evil, disunion in the Christian world, terrible intrigue, even within the church, the Pope having to unify order in medieval Christianity and Christendom. And this was a very difficult situation. Saint Francis marked, and he actually restored, together with Saint Dominic, he restored that. Of course, Simon de Montfort had to crush the Albigensian heresy, which would have been terrible to Christianity, and of course delayed the evil process for at least 200 years. But
that would be a good podcast to do as well. Speak about Simon de Montfort and the whole process as well, the evil process.
Exactly, but that comes in. That was Saint Francis's mission. That's why Dr. Plinio, Professor Plinio Coelho de Oliveira, who formed our founder, says that they were walls to the progress, to the evil process, the revolutionary process. And so that was Saint. But Saint, you had asked me, why did Saint Francis use the term?
Oh, yes, exactly. The term,
Use,
may the Lord give you peace.
may the Lord give you peace. Exactly, because peace, what is the peace? Tranquility of order. Since people were ambitious for human wealth, for earthly wealth,
Mhm.
that always makes a disaster, a turmoil, internal turmoil. Therefore, ambitions, earthly ambitions. And that's why he would say that. He would disarm people. And that's how people would be enchanted him, because he was a great mystic, besides speaking. And that's, we're going to end our podcast with that, with one of the great graces that he received, which was the Stigmata.
Mhm.
That was something which was very impressive. And I even want to read to you something about the Stigmata, which is so important. We have something about the Stigmata here. Of course, another great fact in Saint Francis's life. This was in 1223, because he only lived to be 45 years
Yeah,
old.
he was.
He was very young, and he became blind at the end of his life. Besides the Stigmata, but he celebrated the Assumption of Our Lady August 15th, when he was preparing St. Michael's Day, and then he was fasting for 40 days. He's the author of the St. Michael's Lent, right? So something so beautiful that he was the one who inaugurated the first nativity scene. But it was a true nativity scene with live animals, and he made a whole ceremony that took on his street in La Laverna. That was something that he did. But look here, he received the Stigmata at a certain moment, which was so beautiful. And we have Saint Bonaventure, who says something specifically about the Stigmata. As it stood above him, this was a vision. As it stood above him, he saw that it was a man, and yet a seraphic with six wings. So it was a Christ, our Lord Jesus Christ, was half man, and then wings that came
like an
about.
angel.
Like an angel, but a seraphic Jesus Christ. I don't know if the camera can pick that up, but maybe we could put that
on
there
afterwards.
Put that on when you edit.
afterwards. But this seraphic with six wings. His arms were extended and his feet conjoined, and his body was fixed to a cross. 2 wings were raised above his head, 2 were extended as in flight, and 2 covered the whole body. The face was beautiful beyond all earthly beauty, and it smiled gently upon Francis. Conflicting emotions filled his heart, for though the vision brought great joy, the sight of the suffering and crucified figure stirred him up to deepest sorrow. Pondering what this vision might mean, he finally understood that by God's providence, he would be made like the crucified Christ, not by a bodily martyrdom, but by conformity in mind and heart. Then as the vision disappeared, it left not only a great ardor of love, zeal, fire of love in the inner man, but no less marvelously marked him outwardly with the stigmata of the crucified Jesus. So that was when he received the stigmata, was in retreat, and he had actually asked for that big grace of being conformed spiritually as much as possible, and even bodily as much as possible. But something very interesting is that he didn't use that to show up. Listen, my hands.
Yeah, look at
and that's the great teaching because Saint Francis married Lady Poverty. He married, Dr. Plinio said, Lady Grandeur, that which is great. that which is,
Mhm.
because it's great to be someone who can move souls to be another Christ, but can be so humble. You can say he married the lady humility as well.
Mhm.
Of
Yeah,
course.
And that's the great teaching. You know something? Listen to this. For the remainder of his life, he lived 2 years with the Stigmatas, not that long.
Mhm.
And we remember he's not a priest, right?
Yes.
Francis took the greatest care to hide the Stigmata, which were the marks. He
Mhm.
had the Stigmata even on his side
Side,
and on
his hands.
his hands. And something that
Did he have on
Friar
his feet too? And
feet as
feet
well.
also, yeah.
And Friar Leo,
Mhm.
his
Covered
confessor, said that they were never dirty. His hands were never
Oh.
dirty. His feet was never dirty. He was always clean. You see his tunic, very poor,
but it was always
he was
clean.
very clean. St. Francis was extremely
That shows you that wrong idea that we have, that you're saying that he was a
hippie.
medieval hippie.
Medieval hippie.
He had it was the cloth that he used for his habit was extremely rustic and everything, poor,
very, very.
but it was always clean. He said he was always
After the death of Francis, brother Elias, who was one of his great helpers, announced the Stigmata to the order by a circular letter. Later, brother Leo, the confessor and intimate companion of the saint, who also left a written testimony of the event, said that in death, Francis seemed like one just taken down from the cross.
Oh wow!
Oh.
So
The-
not even the order knew that
Right.
that he had the
Many of the order didn't
you
know.
he had the
Didn't know. And Thomas of Salerno, one of the first historian of the life of Saint Francis, he wrote around 1228 or 1230. He is the one who spoke about the episode of the bishop, right?
Mhm.
Because there's people who question, even some good historians question if that has historical basis.
if it happened really or
Right, if that really happened. But I think something which is necessary, because yes, this is truly belongs to Saint Francis. And you had asked that question, why brother? Oh, it was
it was my brother
Moon.
son
But
and
look
sister Moon.
But look at what he says. Praised be you, my Lord, with all your creatures. So first the Lord
Yeah.
in all of his creatures. That's to
Mhm.
fight the Cathars, the
Mhm.
Albigensian errors, especially Lord, brother, Son, who is the day through whom you bring us light. So God brings us light through the Son. The Son has to be
Has to be good. It can't be bad.
It has to be good, and it has to be seen as a reflection of
God.
God's goodness. Isn't that so beautiful? Through and then praise be you, my Lord, through Sister Moon and the stars in heavens. This is so
Mhm.
evangelical. It's
Yeah.
so scripture-like.
Yeah.
It's totally scripture-like. And then he even calls his illness at the end of his life, he called the illness my sister wounds,
Yeah.
my sister sickness, my sister illness, because that was something, an instrument of God's mercy. The Stigmata was God's mercy of conforming his life totally with Jesus. That's so beautiful.
But it's like you said, his life was completely
In
conformed
everything.
everything with Jesus. That's why he had that one time that he went out. He called that a younger friar there
Leo.
to go. Let's go preach.
Mhm.
And they went to the town. They walked all around the town. Then they started walking back to the monastery. And then the young friar was like, Father Francis, I mean, you said we were going to go preach. We didn't do it. We just went walking around.
Mhm.
So no, didn't you realize we preach by example? Just by our presence,
Mhm.
we was preaching, because he lived everything according to, he was a reflection of God on earth.
That goes back to the beginning as well. St. Dominic said, no, we have to have separate orders.
Mm-hmm.
One to preach and one to give the example.
Exactly. One to preach, and the other one to give the example of detachment.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. So
No, it was very interesting there too. It's like we said in the beginning.
We just
too,
didn't
to see
have
what's
time. We
the-
didn't have time to do see everything. But
Oh no, but it's,
No,
you have to
could
make
go
many.
on.
could have 3 podcasts of St. Francis, then 3 podcasts of each and every
some
saint,
time
and
ago
then-
we did several 4 videos we did also talking about St. Francis, but there's so much that you could about St. Francis that it's
Mhm.
that you could go on for I don't know how long there talking about, but it's like we said in the beginning to try to show that what's the true physiognomy of the saint, because unfortunately
True.
in the world nowadays they try to deform what our notion of what sanctity is, right?
like you said, a
Exactly.
medieval hippie. They call him a medieval hippie. Why? Because they know that it's wrong to be a hippie, but they want to find something that makes it look like it's right. So they say, oh, St. Francis. St. Francis are our defender.
Deforming even Jesus. People consider him like a revolutionary,
Yeah.
but he was actually he restoring that perfect order.
Yes.
That perfect order. And that's what St. Francis's great goal was: respect for God, and therefore respect for the creatures of God. In the hierarchy, he gave more importance to the sanctity of his followers and detaching them from earthly things, which would deter them from getting to heaven. That was his great mission.
Hey, he gave the due respect
Mhm.
for everything, right?
And opening our eyes to that which is marvelous in creation. So he was a great counter-revolutionary, not only against the Albigensian, the Catharism, but against everything that would take us away from the path of Jesus.
Yeah.
So let's
Well,
ask for his blessing
yes, please.
and bestow the blessing of God, but through the intercession of St. Francis. And thank you for being with us once again. In one of our next podcasts, I promise we're going to take you not on a trip to Assisi, but a trip to another church to contemplate other saints. And may the blessing through the intercession of St. Francis, may the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit come upon you and remain with you forever.
Amen.
Amen.
Salve Maria.
Salve Maria.
Salve Maria.